Hi everyone, this is Veronika Kyrylenko of the New American Magazine. Our regular viewers and readers know that one of the most crucial pillars of our civilization, the nuclear family, is under attack in America and has been for at least several decades. One of the most tragic aspects of the crisis is that more than 18 million American children, which is 1 in 4, live in households without a father. How to address this issue? Our guest today, Joseph Gormley of the organization Saving Fatherhood, may help us figure it out. Mr. Gormley, thank you for being with us today.
I'm so grateful to be here, Veronica. Thank you for having me.
Sure. So, Mr. Gormley, on April 11th, America arguably most popular governor, Florida's Ron DeSantis, signed House Bill 7065, which includes educational programs, mentorship programs, and one-on-one support to encourage responsible and involved fatherhood in Florida. And this is how it's described on the governor's website. And to tell the truth, the cause is more than worthy, and the bill on the surface seems very appealing, yet it apparently has some serious shortcomings. So please break down this piece of legislation for us.
Sure. Well, the only thing appealing was the use of certain vernacular that was attractive to people who are actually suffering from the fatherlessness crisis, which is a term that we like to hear. However, the governor in his speech went on to scold people. I didn't see um, the entire speech, but I saw clips of it where he actually scolded people, telling them that they needed to have a role as fathers in their family, as if the fatherlessness crisis was strictly because men didn't want to be dads, and there could be nothing further from the truth.
Mhm. We know that the bill is tied to nearly $70 million in funding for a spectrum of programs through the Departments of Juvenile Justice and the Departments of Children and Families. Could you please tell what those programs are about?
Sure. And I didn't thank you for having me on the program today, but thank you very much because this is so important to me. I've been involved with savingfatherhood.org since 2017. And the reason why is because the family court system in our country violates all 10 of the Bill of Rights, among other violations that they commit on a daily basis. In partnership with the groups that Governor DeSantis is seeking to increase funding to Child Protective Services in Florida, although in every state they go by a different name. They actually pull 700 children out of their homes, and admittedly, in their own statements, 1 out of 5 of those children need help. The other 4 are pulled out of their homes unconstitutionally, and we are completely against that.
Mhm. I know that in that bill, a significant portion of the money, about $32.6 million, is earmarked for the program called the Responsible Fatherhood Initiative, which will go toward helping fathers find employment, manage child support obligations, and transition from a period of incarceration. What's your comment on that?
Yeah, so the money is basically earmarked for 2 different directions, right? $70 million, and not exactly half, but half of that, but about that will go to Child Protective Services organizations who already take out about 3.2 million children out of their homes per year nationally, and out of that, many of those children are taken from homes that didn't want to be taken from, that were unconstitutionally taken. A big percentage are taken out of hospitals. We now have poor people that are afraid to go to the hospital for fear that a doctor may turn them in because the child just isn't clean enough or wearing the nicest clothing. We have a lot of discrimination against poor people because of that, because of Child Protective Service. So that's half of it. The other half of the money is going to go to NGOs, 501c3s, which, again, I know your listeners care about the Constitution. 501c system is just a horrible, horrible institution in itself for many reasons. But those 501c3s work on the premise that dads need to be trained to be dads. If
Mhm.
they aren't, it works on the premise that there's no institutions out there that are capable of helping dads be dads. I'm going to tell you right now, as a Christian, there are churches, synagogues, and mosques that are more than willing to help people become good dads, whichever flavor you like. That's where we need to focus our efforts to let freedom of ring and not to take money from one group and funnel it to people who don't need the money.
Right. I wanted to ask you this thing. According to the United States Census Bureau, in 1960s, 8% of children lived solely with their mothers. And since then, the number has been a constant rise, and now it's 25%. What do you identify as the reason for this troubling trend?
Well, at savingfatherhood.org, we talk about trying to get God back in the family. There are three spheres of there's three spheres of authority God instituted in the Bible. One would be family, second would be the church, and the third would be government. And each sphere has been given very specific direction as to what they are to uphold and what they are to protect. And the family sphere has been completely run over by the government, and so has the church. The church has actually participated in that with a 501c3. However, uh, since 1969, we started with a thing called no fault divorce. But this is, as you know, I listen to and read about on the New American all the time, which you guys faithfully report. This has been going on a lot longer than that. But no fault divorce is really one of the most horrific things in our country. You no longer have the ability to hold someone accountable to adultery or to abandonment. And the Bible is very clear, and it's actually a violation of our religious freedom to have to be subjected to no fault divorce and the family court, where Christians are regularly penalized for being Christians and trying to live out their marriages in a Christian way.
Hmm. And the census also identified a significant racial disparity of fatherlessness. There's some 24% of white kids living without dad, 33% Hispanics, and more than 50% Black kids. How do you explain it?
So I really hate the fact that we're constantly labeling people by the amount of melatonin in their skins. It's or melatonin. Anyway, I think it's ridiculous. Listen, there is injustice around for everybody. It just so happens that these courts are very financially focused. It's a $50 billion industry, the divorce court. Marriage, to give you a comparison, marriage is a $1 billion industry. So we're talking 50 times more money made just in legal fees. So that's a huge, huge, huge problem. In the Black communities, in the Hispanic communities, it's not because of their skin color. It's that there's uh, economic inequality, because it's very difficult these days to start up your own business. There's so much paperwork and so much bureaucracy, and they take so much of your paycheck. These folks are financially challenged, right, as economic industries change, and because of that, they are put down in the family courts. I work with some groups that are would be considered Black groups that are trying to change the amount of child support that people have to pay. One of the big problems is child support is not based on what your children need. Child support is not based on how much money the parent makes, but it's based on what the parent could make, what they potentially could make, which is absolutely absurd. So many fathers get caught up in the in the cycle of not being able to ever catch up on their child support. And if they misstep, lose their job for a short period of time, then they're often put in jail. A couple of years ago, one of the big quote unquote uh, Black killings that happened in the mainstream media was a man who was short, and I forget his name, I can get it to you, but he was behind $30,000 on his child support, and that's why he was shot.
Wow. The researchers who actually dig into this problem and try to figure out the reasons what's going on, they say that divorce, premarital birth, and crime are usually the main reasons for broken families. All those have been on the rise as well. So what's your comment on that? Why is it happening?
So divorce is something that the government has taken over. The church has allowed them to take it over. So churches don't get involved in that. The problem is you go into marriage, and if you grow up in a Christian culture, you grow up and you think that marriage is a covenant between two people and God. But as soon as you make your vows, either in front of the altar or your pastor or priest, whoever it might be, you sign a little piece of paper called a marriage license. And if you're a 20 something, you don't know any better. You haven't been taught, you certainly haven't been taught the Constitution in schools. So you really, you're really not aware that a license shouldn't be needed to marry someone, but it is. And so when you sign that license, you are entering into a unilateral contract with the state, a unilateral contract that the state can change at any time. So if you're 50 or 60 years old and they changed the laws just 5 years ago, you are now bound by those laws. And
Mhm.
here's the problem. You go into, if one spouse wants to nullify that contract, and I know if you're a new American listener or reader, you know about nullification. If they want to nullify that contract, they can't do it. They can't do it. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, one spouse can do it without the other. I misspoke. One spouse can nullify that covenant without the other. It takes two people to get married, but only one person to get divorced. If you want to get divorced, you're going to get divorced. Now, what the attorneys will train you on is as soon as you get into the courtroom, the person who files a protective order or a temporary restraining order, it's called different things in different states, and soon whoever files that first has the upper hand. So you do it, and they train you to go after the other party, and they warn you if you don't do it, you're going to lose your kid. If you don't trash your opponent and put them in the mud and push their face in it as hard as you can, you might lose your kids, you might lose your house, you're going to lose everything. And so they create this combative situation. So the two people are put apart. I know so many men that want to reconcile with their wife that left, but they can't because a restraining order has been filed, a protective order has been filed. They're not even allowed to call them. And as soon as they do, they go to jail. I have another guy. He went to jail. Well, he goes to jail multiple times because the same judge said, you have a right to see your kids and your wife has to drop them off, but there's a protective order and you can't call her. And so we texted her, tried to set up a schedule to meet up with the kids, and then they put him in jail.
But he wasn't violent or anything like that, was he?
No, there's no. In fact, here's another thing that you may not ask me, but I want to make sure I tell you. The entire cultural, the entire cultural myth that violence against women is common in marriage is a lie. 80% of the time, women leave marriage, or women are the ones leaving the household. And more than 50% of the time, women are the ones committing physical abuse. And that's from the CDC, new documentation I can share.
You said 50% of the time?
More than 50% of the time, it's the woman that's doing the physical violence and not the man. The media, however, will take the most egregious examples and post them out there to show you how bad it can be. And certainly, since men are larger, they can create more damage. So I'm not saying that there's not women that aren't physically abused. There absolutely are. I'm not saying that it's not horrific. It absolutely is. But having a family court where you can't hold someone accountable or you have a thing like these restraining orders where there's no judge. I mean, there's no jury. There's no evaluation. It's just hashtag me too. If they
Just
say,
the government.
yeah, if they say you did it, you did it. There's no evidence. They don't need evidence when you have one judge and no jury. Again, violation of the Seventh Amendment right there.
How about a number of child being born outside of the wedlock? How do you explain it? What's behind it?
Oh, it's so easy to explain. Again, it's a godless issue, right? So we have multiple. It's multifaceted here, and it's getting worse. Look, listen, this problem, as you mentioned, started. The family court started in the middle of the last century, um, kids don't want to get married. They've seen their parents go through divorce. They've seen parental alienation, where psychologists have evaluated this and talked about this over and over again, but the media never does. Where kids lose half of their whole family, they never get to see them again. They don't want to be involved in marriage, and the church isn't addressing divorce. Right? The church isn't saying, "Hey, listen, we have a right to manage divorce within the church." That's a religious freedom issue. No, they're not saying that. They're allowing the government to manage people in these family courts. It's illegal, it's unconstitutional, and it's getting worse. And people need to start caring, because even if your family hasn't been singed by divorce, you say you're a good Christian, guess what? There's a really good chance that your child or your grandchild is going to marry someone in this post-Christian culture that's going to abandon them, and you're going to get drugged to the family court too.
Right. Mr. Gormley, do you see this crisis as just a result of many unfortunate circumstances, just a coincidence, or do you see it as a more coordinated attack, maybe on the very institution of family?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as new American readers know, this attack on the family has been going on for over a century, and probably, since it's been a spiritual battle since the founding of America, right? So we can look back at attacks on the court system in the 1830s. We can start to look at things that were happening before and after the Civil War, and we can look at how it literally is a spiritual battle. It's a desire to destroy those things that God has designed for the family, for the church, and for governments. Um, and we really need to attack it at that root. So the first thing we need to do, and that's why Saving Fatherhood talks about serving victims of broken families, to get them. We always say at the beginning of every podcast, we are not for father's rights. We're not for mother's rights. We're for our heavenly Father's right to have dominion over families. But yes, to your point, absolutely. The family court is completely unconstitutional. I used to joke around that there was only one of the amendments in the Bill of Rights that they didn't violate. I used to say, hey, they never violate the Third Amendment, right? They're not quartering troops in someone's house. And that was my joke line, although I always had to, most people don't know the Bill of Rights. So if I just say the Third Amendment, they don't know what I'm talking about. I've got to explain it, unfortunately. However, there's this thing called a guardian ad litem. And because the whole family court works on the presupposition that you do not represent the best interests of your child, they will, when they clarify that and they identify and document that you do not represent the best interests of the child in their opinion, they will hire what's called a guardian ad litem, which is usually an attorney that sits in your living room, documents what's going on in your house, and then reports back to the court as to how they think your child's best interest would be served. If that's not quartering troops in your home, I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm. Whom do you also identify as the offenders against the institution of family? You said the family court. You said it's a spiritual battle, but we see that there are many forces that try to destroy the family. We see the big corporations. We see pop culture. We see absolutely ridiculous legislation. For example, the Biden administration just promoting transgenderism in children and so on. Do you see that there are actually way too many players that are trying to undermine the family?
So as we pointed out, there are a lot of organizations that are trying to undermine the family, but our biggest problem is ignorance. And I think if I give Governor DeSantis the benefit of the doubt, again, I think he's done a lot of good things. If I give him the benefit of the doubt, he probably has someone in his organization say, hey, fatherlessness, we can help that, and we're throwing money here. Although they were already throwing money at CPS, they just increased the amount, and so why not get a photo op? So I think ignorance of the issue is the biggest thing, because people don't want to talk about it, right? So if your kids have been stolen from you by the family court because and you're not allowed to see them, but you didn't do anything wrong, you didn't break any laws, and they just took your kids, it's quite shameful. And there is still shame in this culture, although the shame is um, going in the wrong directions. But there are a lot of people out there losing their kids. It's millions and millions of children that are taken from their parents illegally every year. 3.2 million is cited by Child Protective Services in their own reports nationally, all done with the government. And it's all paid for by your Social Security funds under Title 4D and E. Title 4D of the Social Security Administration pays for the family courts. It reimburses states for child support reimbursement, and Title 4E pays for these really nice people that really care about your kids, called Child Protective Services.
Hmm. Mr. Gormley, there are just too many kids growing up without a father, and we know that the implications for children are just monstrous. Many of them are depressed, many of them will drop out of school, and many of them will just simply end up in jail. And it's truly tragic, especially for boys, but for girls, it's also very bad. Many of them will end up being pregnant before getting married, and so on. So, what advice do you have for young Americans who are unfortunate enough to be growing up without the father?
Find a good Bible believing church, study the Bible, uh, steep your children in it. Even if you are an atheist, if you are an agnostic, um, the Bible is, without argument, the most influential book in history. It is the most widely um, sold, widely read, and it is what our country was founded on. And if you want to go back to respect freedom, respect liberty, the principles that the Bible eschews are absolutely critical. Even if you say, "Oh, well, the founding fathers weren't all Christians," or whatever your spin is on that, it's true. And every Christian is only sanctified so much, has only come through their walk with the Lord so much, and we all need more Jesus in our life. And if you want to keep your family together, only marry someone who's in their Bible every day. All I can tell you, if you end up with marrying someone who takes you to family court, it will destroy your life. It will destroy your children, and it will have it will put this whole country in this cycle that we're in right now, where we're trying to get out, but nobody even sees the problem because it's being hidden. Additionally, I would also recommend, do not send your kids to any sort of public school. The public schools teach them to hate God and to hate their family. So we have big problems with children being taught that they have the right. Forget about all these other parental rights, and again, to Governor DeSantis' credit, we got to pay attention to him. I'm in New Jersey, he's in Florida, but he's a national figure now. People are talking about him running for president. He needs to see that these schools are telling kids that they have the right, when they don't want what their parents tell them to do. They have the right to call Child Protective Services when they don't want to do something. So it's not just the people that are calling into Child Protective Services. They're not just the doctors in the hospitals and the your neighbors who don't like you. It's also the kids. The kids are being taught to disrespect their parents. They're being taught to violate all sorts of godly laws. And so that would be my advice. Additionally, don't get married with a marriage license. There are 3 states where you can get a covenant component. Everyone else has taken the road down, no fault divorce. You can go to Louisiana, Arizona, or Arkansas. Those 3 states have a covenant marriage license that does respect the Bible and the Bible's design for marriage.
And what's your message to American fathers, besides just going back to our spiritual roots and study the Bible?
But be willing to suffer. Be willing to suffer for your spouse. Ephesians 5:25, I think, says that we're to love our spouse as Christ loved the church. Do that. Love them through pain and suffering. Be humble and keep your family together. But you got to get them in church. Like we just said. But the other thing is too, don't allow your marriage. 1 Corinthians 7 talks that says that if your unbelieving spouse leaves you, you are free. So get a believing spouse.
Beautiful, beautiful advice. Mr. Gormley, please tell our viewers how they can connect with you and learn more about your organization.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. SavingFatherhood.org is our website, and we go live every Sunday night at 8 p.m. You can interact with our guests in the chat room and ask questions. We also have a Wednesday night Bible study for divorced and or alienated dads, really any dads. It's a men's Bible study. We talked about a women's Bible study as well, but that just hasn't come to fruition. Our email is hope@savingfatherhood.org. That's HOPE at savingfatherhood.org.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Gormley, and for all the very useful, interesting information. God bless you.
Okay, thank you. God bless you.